Hello and welcome to this NET English Back to Basics video, and today we're focusing on AQA Language Paper 2 question 4. Now the idea with all of these videos is that I'll be talking through the simplest possible summary of how the question works, what to expect, and some tips about how to approach it when you come to the exam. By the time you get to question 4, you should already have read both sources and answered questions 1 to 3. Now, question 4 is basically all of the skills rolled into one. You're comparing both sources and you're analysing both sources, and what you're focusing on now is, unlike question 2, the thoughts and feelings and perspectives of the writers. Now, the question is worth 16 marks, so you've got 20 minutes, and you're probably going to manage about 2 comparisons in that time. If that sounds familiar, be reassured. You can reuse whatever is relevant from questions 2 and 3. You just need to make sure that you steer it towards the specific question. So you can copy, you can repeat stuff you said before on your paper, but just make sure you're steering it now towards the focus of this question. Now, unsurprisingly, for a question that's supposed to test all the different skills, you're marked on, firstly, discussing the perspectives of the writers. So what's the same and what's different? Secondly, you're marked on choosing evidence to back up those perspectives. Thirdly, you're marked on analysing that evidence, so the features, the techniques, the words, and explaining the impact those have. And a way to think about it, if useful, is that it's more or less the same approach that you take with the power and conflict poetry if you're also doing AQA literature. So for this question on this paper, for example, we might pick out the fact that in source A, the writer, Phil Wilson, seems to feel that the weather shifts from something inoffensive to becoming a source of threat. Whereas in source B, Sterling seems to feel that the weather is simply dull and depressing rather than actually dangerous. Now for source A, I can tell that the writer finds the weather threatening because it says that the wind was howling like a demon through the crags. But I can also infer from it that the writer is enduring something that's almost hellish. That's the demon bit. And that's my evidence and then my inference. In the quotation, I can talk about the simile comparing the wind to a demon, which creates almost a sense of deliberate danger from the wind, and possibly an implication that it's actually life-threatening. And I could maybe also zoom in on the verb howling, which suggests that the wind is predatory, controlling, angry, animalistic, almost like it's hunting him. In source B, I can tell that the writer finds the weather dull and depressing because he describes the sad, soaking figures trudging or rushing through the sodden streets. But I can also infer from it that the weather is spreading misery among the people more broadly. So that's my evidence and that's my inference. In the quotation, I can talk about the semantic field of wetness, which creates a sense of the moisture soaking the place, the people, and even the text. And I could maybe also zoom in on the adjective sad, which suggests a wider sense of the depressing misery the weather is causing. Now that's one comparison set up, and I'd want another comparison as well in the time that I've got. So what it might end up looking for my first comparison is something along the lines of this. In source A, Wilson seems to feel that the weather shifts to become something threatening, describing the wind as howling like a demon through the crags, with the simile comparing the wind to a demon, creating a sense of evil, perhaps suggesting that the experience is hellish and even life-threatening, with the verb howling in particular suggesting that the wind is prowling and predatory, angry and aggressive, almost like it's hunting him, and that he has therefore become its prey. In contrast, the writer of source B seems to find the weather dull and depressing, describing the sad, soaking figures rushing through the sodden streets, with the semantic field of wetness creating a sense of the spreading misery among the people, with the rain soaking the place, the population, and even the text. The adjective sad in particular suggests a wider sense of the depressing misery the weather is causing, and that's a sharp contrast with the life-threatening conditions faced by the writer of source A and the direct pain that he experiences. If I'm looking to push for higher marks on this question, and because it's a high tariff question, it's worth maximising the marks if you can. Again, and this will be familiar, it's all about the depth and the development. I can develop the comparison and talk about why there are differences. And that's often due to the context in which the writing is taking place, although I don't want to go too far into thinking about historical, cultural context and so on. I could go for more development of my analysis. I can discuss the features in more detail. Perhaps I could look for extra layers of interpretation or alternative ways of looking at it. I could talk about more individual words and draw out inferences about them, and that's always a safe thing to be doing. And there we go. That's Language Paper 2, Question 4. Hopefully that's been useful. As ever, don't forget the whole range of other videos available on the Net English YouTube channel, covering every other topic. But thank you very much for your time today.